Welcome back. Today's episode features Aliza Shapiro. Aliza is a licensed therapist and founder of Therapy in the City. In her clinical work, Aliza specializes in treating adults and young adults facing anxiety, depression, OCD, emotion dysregulation, and related disorders. Aliza currently serves on the Wellness Advisory Board of Pop Sugar Wellness, Miami Concierge Pediatrics, and Teen Health 101. Aliza, or as some may know her as Therapist in NYC, is a passionate advocate for mental health awareness, leads seminars on mindfulness, emotion regulation, and self-esteem, and has been featured in Glamour, New Beauty, and Wondermind. Enjoy. Don't skip through this ad. We're gonna make it brief. Today's episode is brought to you by Z-Turn Thermal Printer, a tiny printer with big results. If you're like me, you're doing a lot of purchasing and returning. Be honest with yourself. Z-Turn makes it so simple. Skip the lines at the post office or UPS because their printer is portable, virtually pocket-sized, connects to your smartphone, and is battery-operated. I love that because you never have to worry about constantly charging it in a world where we're always worried about charging our things. Just turn it on and have your return label printed on a sticker in seconds. And as if that's not good enough, you won't need to worry about any ink or expensive toners because Z-Turn works with thermal printing for clear, smudge-proof, convenient labels every time. Check it out in the link in the show notes. Aliza, welcome in today. Therapist in NYC, now LA.
Exactly. Bi-coastal therapist.
Yeah. How is the bi-coastal life?
It's great. I'm loving LA. I feel like it's very good for my psyche.
Okay.
But it's definitely an adjustment.
Yeah.
Out of my comfort zone, but we're doing hard things. We're doing new things.
We can do hard things. What's like some of the biggest immediate differences that were like a culture shock for you between New York and LA?
I don't think most people realize this, but culturally, the people are so different.
Yeah.
I joke that I want people to just like rush or be anxious just so I can feel at home. I'm like, can somebody try to like honk or go faster or speed around me?
Yeah.
No.
The one thing I do notice about the LA drivers is like nobody's in a rush.
Nobody's in a rush. Never, ever.
Well, there's nowhere to be.
Exactly. You guys also love to take breaks during the day.
Oh, yeah.
Love it.
LA is a break culture.
Break culture.
We don't even begin culture.
That's also true. That's also true. Eli, my husband, told me the other day, I called him at like 3 o'clock. I'm like, where are you? He's like, oh, I'm at the spa. I'm like,
I love it.
But it's 3 o'clock. He's like, yeah. And I'm cold plunging right now.
Oh my God.
And that's just how you guys do it here.
It's really, really different. And I think people say it like a cliche.
But it's true.
But it's very, very
true. It's
true.
So real and so true. And it's kind of hilarious because my personality is like New York to the max.
Yeah.
And I am changing.
I could see that for you.
Yeah, but probably for the better.
Okay, good. Yeah, a little bit of California, a little bit of New York. So why therapy? What prompted you to get into that line of work?
When I was a kid, I swore I would never be a therapist.
Yeah.
I told everybody that therapy is for losers who are a little crazy. My parents tried to send me to therapy like 50 times, and I just kept leaving. I'm like, it's not for me, guys.
Right.
My older sister became a therapist. She became a psychologist, and we're super close. I love her to pieces. She was like my everything growing up, and I kind of followed in her footsteps. And we used to joke that like I would take care of her kids because she would mess them up, obviously being a psychologist.
Right.
And then the joke is that I'm now the therapist too.
That's so like your sister was a great influence, like
Great
as a part of that for your becoming a therapist.
Yeah, and I obviously had my own stuff growing up, and I feel like I had a lot of emotions. I'm like a very emotional person. Some of us just are more in touch with our feelings and are born more emotional. I don't feel like I ever really fully understood it or knew what to do with it or how to navigate it. So a huge part of me wanting to be in this world as a therapist is being able to help other people recognize that you don't have to be at a breaking point to take care of your emotional health. In fact, it's just as vital as every other part of your health.
Yeah. Some people definitely are. I was actually just talking about this with my producer and the last guest. In fact, we were talking about how addicts are highly, highly sensitive.
Yeah.
They're so sensitive that often it's like, partially a way for them to like kind of escape some of those intense emotions. And I had often judged addicts in the past being like, what is their, like, I could have one drink, I could have two drinks, but I guess I don't many of us don't feel on the same levels. We just don't.
100%. And some people feel more often. Some people feel more deeply. Some people have a feeling and have no idea how to return to what we call baseline. So there's a lot of different ways of feeling and a lot of different manifestations of how emotions show up in each of our lives.
Right.
And it's funny, we go to school, we learn history, we learn math, we learn science, but nobody sits you down and says, hey, here's an emotion. When it shows up, this is how you deal with it. Or, hey, here's an emotion. It's going to help you live a much better life if you can tap into it.
Yeah.
So we kind of go our whole lives thinking that there are these big, scary things that we need to avoid in order to stay, stable and to maintain our lives. But really, emotions can be this incredible life force that none of us really, truly know how to use.
So baseline would be like, you're doing all right.
Yeah, baseline is I'm doing all right. I'm going through my emotions. I'm doing my thing. But everybody's baseline has emotions. As human beings, we are creatures of emotion. And if we don't tap into those emotions, we're actually not at our best either.
Right. What would you say are the top 3 emotions that people spend the most time avoiding?
Oh, nobody likes fear.
Yeah.
That's probably 90% of what I do is helping people get comfortable with fear. People, I think, are more okay with sadness. But I think that the other one that people really hate is shame, which I'd love for us to talk about.
Yeah.
And in terms of the third biggest emotion that I believe people avoid, that's a great question. I don't know if it's an emotion per se, but maybe self-exploration. Oh. I think a lot of people are really afraid to find themselves and to learn who they are, what their identity is all about. I think it takes a lot of courage to do that because you have to potentially shed a whole host of other things that you used to think were you and maybe face the idea that you're not living up to who you truly, truly are, which is, a scary thing in and of itself.
What are some very obvious telltale signs that you're not acknowledging you're hiding from the emotions?
Irritability is a big one.
Okay.
If you're walking around with a lot of irritability all the time and everyone's bothering you and you're bothered by this person and you're bothered by this experience, that is a telltale sign that you have a lot of undealt with emotions lurking beneath the surface, that if you just kind of gave them a little TLC, your whole world would be better.
It's wild that you just said that, and I'll tell you why. Somebody DM'd me the other day, a stranger.
Yeah.
She's like, she picked 2 Instagram accounts.
Yeah.
That are similar to mine. She's like, can you believe this person? Do you think they actually have this much money? Or do you think this person, and she she spewed off a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
And I said to her, I'm just going to go out on a limb here. I don't know that this has anything to do with those 2 people. Are you doing okay?
Yeah.
And she broke down and it ended up being something much, much deeper. So it's so wild that you just said that. Because what first came up was irritability.
Yeah.
She was irritated by people that she didn't know online.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe that's a lot of the haters too online.
I think a lot of what the haters are going through is that there's undealt with emotions within themselves. If you or me were in a very good place in our life and we saw somebody doing something ludicrous on Instagram, we'd be like, oh, that's ludicrous. And we would move on.
Right.
That's
ludicrous. What am I having for lunch?
Exactly. It wouldn't completely throw us for a loop. It wouldn't completely ruin our days. We're like, okay, that's that person, whatever.
Yeah.
And we move on. But somebody who has a lot of undealt with crap living on the inside, they can be bothered by somebody else. And then those emotions will kind of latch onto somebody else's story because they don't have anywhere else to go.
Mm. Wow. So you sort of have a very, I like to call front row seat to what's happening. I think therapists have a very good finger on the pulse of what's happening in society, right? Because they're in the rooms with people, hearing, you're getting the deeper sort of inner workings. Yeah. What are we seeing? What's prevalent right now? Is there common themes that are sort of recurring that we're sort of seeing maybe as a general rule, that we're struggling with as a nation, as a society, as a people?
I think a lot of us have fragilized ourselves.
What does that mean? Oh my God, fragilized, that makes me feel scared.
Well, That's so meta because therein lies the problem. We experience some sort of unknown or uncertainty and we're like, alert, oh my God, what's going to happen? What does this mean?
Right.
I think our parents' generation were kind of the opposite, and they weren't allowed to be fragile or emotional at all. A lot of them were, first generation survivors, immigrants. They had just gone through so much. Their emotional worlds were very different than ours. We kind of got a new wave of therapy and wellness and emotion, and we were almost overcorrecting. And a lot of people I see get so freaked out when an emotion comes up that they almost like break. And just because you're having an emotional experience, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you or with your world. It's a beautiful thing. But a lot of people that I work with feel any sort of emotional experience and they either try to suppress it so deeply that it ends up cropping up in other ways that they don't like or that don't make sense, like addiction or irritability, or they experience an emotion and it just completely ruins them. They feel sadness and they're like, I'm depressed.
Right.
They feel anxiety and they say, I cannot leave my house anymore. They feel uncertainty about work or about their passion or their dream. And they're like, that's it, I'm done. I don't know who I am. And that's kind of it. That's where they let their world stop.
So we've become a very fragile nation.
I think so. I think a little bit. I think we've had to be. We're overcorrecting, but
Right.
But there is a strength I think we need to all kind of relearn as well.
Like of just endurance or I guess like what you said to me, like we could do hard things.
We can do hard things. I can tolerate hard experiences.
Do you think some of that's like parental though? Because ever since I can remember from when I was young,
Yeah.
big emotions didn't terrify me. But I meet a lot of people who they are that way. And I wonder is like, did they just not have any language around emotions? Because is some of it, you think, a language thing?
Did your parents, and you can obviously share whatever you want here, but did your parents allow you to have big emotional experiences?
Yeah.
When you cried, did they say it's okay to cry?
Well, my dad was not as present. My mom was definitely more of like the boo-boo fixer.
Yeah.
Very much so.
So you were allowed to cry, you were allowed to feel.
Yeah.
That's a rare gift, Adel. A lot of people grew up in what we call socially invalidating environments. There's a whole theory actually based on this called the biosocial theory, that people who are born more emotional, which just means that's either genetic or with just emotional susceptibility, if they're in environments that are naturally more invalidating, their parents are rough or their parents say, get over it or just brush it off, you're fine. They never learned how to feel. They never put language to, what you said was absolutely true. They never had language to feelings whatsoever. They were taught two things. Don't feel at all, or when you feel, make it go away. So they grow up and they've never learned how to feel. So they're telling themselves don't feel at all, or when an emotion comes up, make it go away. So how on earth are they supposed to learn that as adults? Those kids become adults, they play by the same rule as the child because they never learned anything different. And so people are terrified of big feelings.
Is the antidote therapy? Like to get language around it?
I mean, I love therapy. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm biased.
No, I'm asking the wrong person. No,
yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I guess like if you think about what the problem is, the only antidote would be language around the emotions and like learning how to identify them first, right? 'Cause I guess you must experience, people probably don't even know what the emotion is.
Not a clue. Not a clue. They walk into my office and I work with a lot of people. I work with the guys on Wall Street. I work with the moms who have 4 kids who have all the money in the world but suddenly have lost themselves completely. I work with the highly ambitious lawyers. I work with the kids who are in private schools. I work with everybody. And a big feeling comes and it's almost like I have no idea what to do with it. I cannot even label it. I don't know what is happening to me.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So then I wonder about this whole, and this could go one of two ways. This could either be, it's great because it's sort of part of the solution for helping people who maybe don't have access to therapy, and or it could also very much play into the new fragility culture, we'll call it, the pop therapy.
Oh, God.
Instagram
Don't
therapy.
even get me started.
Oh, we're going to get started.
Oh, my God.
It's so prevalent.
I'm going to stand on my soapbox. I'm not going to get off. I'm warning you, Adel.
I'm putting on my blanket because I see so much of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think people think that I'm guilty of it too, because I'm a therapist and I'm on Instagram and I'll give snippets of 30 seconds, understanding your anxiety in 30 seconds or less. But the truth is, it's so deep and it's so real and it's so personal. If you try to water down therapy into like a meme,
an infographic,
with a little like person taking a shower being like, I'm better now, you're missing the whole point.
Yeah. So overall, do you think this access to, like, I'm just gonna call it pop therapy because it's like,
that's great language,
fun colors and little infographics, and it's like you
matter.
like you matter, like, you know, and it's being completely swallowed up by the masses. I would say, like, in my explore page and in my algorithm, maybe because my algorithm knows I'm like growth mindset oriented and I'm interested in that kind of stuff, and maybe because I follow you and things like that, I get that stuff all day. And I think to myself, God, if I was a young person right now and I didn't have the knowledge and the understanding of like the deep, intricate and complex thoughts that I know, what would this mean for me? So like, ultimately, is it damaging to have all this access? Like,
I'll tell you what I love about it first.
Okay.
I love that it makes people think.
That's true.
And I love that it normalizes and destigmatizes concepts around mental health and wellness.
Okay, that's
20 years ago, nobody was talking about it, and you were looked at like a crazy person if you had one conversation about a panic attack. Let's just say. And now you can read, 400 memes about a panic attack a day. So I love that it's normalizing and destigmatizing concepts around mental health. That's fabulous.
I did hear on TikTok that they call SSRIs hot girl pills.
Oh, boy.
It's actually a thing.
I cannot even.
That stresses me out.
I'm stressed out.
Because it's like, oh, if you want to be a hot girl, you have to be on an SSRI.
You have to be on meds.
Antidepressants. And
you have to be on an antidepressant. And by the way, it's not hot necessarily to be in therapy. So if you're just on meds, you're cured. You're great. You're killing it. And in reality, the best combo is SSRIs plus therapy.
Of course.
Because your medication will be a very helpful, important kind of crutch, Band-Aid, stabilizer. But if you're not changing your life is never going to change. So that's hilarious. I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, yeah.
But the downfall, and I think this is one of the biggest downfalls, is that it's not only therapists doling out advice. It's every influencer and their mother. Like, who qualified you to be giving this person?
I feel guilt. I feel like I might be in that genre.
First of all, Adel, I love everything you post. I die of from laughter.
Out some advice.
But advice
is therapy.
Advice is different than saying, these are ways that I cured my lifestyle by manifesting A, B, and C. And all of a sudden, I make $1 billion and I live on an island with my hot husband. I'm sorry.
Right.
You're telling somebody that they can completely disrupt their life by thinking positive thoughts when they're dealing with a trauma or they're dealing with an addiction. Like, to me, that's the harmful part that gets really under my skin, as you can tell.
Yeah. Well, we gave you the soapbox.
Yeah. I'll get off now.
I worry about it, but I guess you're right. In many ways, it's good that at least there's awareness around it. There's no way to stop it. Like, it's here now. Pop therapy is here.
And again, I love that we're talking about things, but I think like in everything in life, you got to be real careful what you consume.
Yeah.
You don't believe every single news media outlet that you read. You don't have to believe every single piece of self-help advice. And I think a big part of this is being really in touch with yourself. If you're absorbing every single thing that you consume, you might not be as aligned with yourself as you think you are.
Yeah.
If you're able to weed out, this really resonates with me, this really does not, you're in a great place, because that means you have a lot of emotional awareness and wherewithal to be able to say, this is good for me, this is not.
What are some great ways that people could begin to figure out how to get in touch with themselves?
I have an amazing mentor. I love learning from people, and I'm learning from people all the time. I have an amazing mentor that I met with a couple of times, and one thing that she said to me to try as a trick was to ask these 3 questions. You can do it right now. I'll do it on you. You don't have to answer out loud.
I love this.
Okay. If you can't answer these with rapid fire in your own brain, we'll talk about it.
Okay.
But if you can, you're in good shape.
Okay.
How do I feel?
Okay.
What do I want? What do I need? What do I need?
How do I feel is easy.
Right, that's what I said.
What do I want? Okay, and what do I need?
There you go. That feeling, Adel, right there, that like sigh plus like introspective longing to connect with yourself. I saw it all. Those are the questions to ask constantly throughout the day to get in touch with yourself and with who you are and with what you want and with what you need.
What's like being a therapist online in 2024?
My favorite part is the Q&As that I do on Sundays.
Yeah.
I love those.
I love a Q&A.
I love a good Q&A.
It's a great way to connect too.
Yeah, and people are so smart.
I'm always shocked at how insightful people's questions are. You must get even more insightful questions because your audience.
Yeah, and so deep. I'm so like enamored by my audience sometimes. And I don't even like the word audience. It feels like a community.
Yeah.
People are so deep and so real. And they ask questions that I'm so honestly touched and flattered and grateful that they can be open with me about.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite part. I struggle a little bit with being a Jewish therapist online right now. I think that part of the culture is a little tough.
Yeah.
A little lonely, to be honest.
Yeah.
But rallying behind my Jewish sisters who are also just, so brave and courageous.
I love that.
But I feel like it's such a deep way to be in such a space that can be shallow. And to me, Instagram has brought such a staggering amount of beauty and depth in my own life as a therapist. So I'm a big fan.
I love that. Me too.
Yeah.
Has there been any just big moment or impactful moment or something that happened in your life that radically shifted or created a big change in the way that you approached your practice?
That is a great question. A couple things come to mind. I had a terrible, terrible breakup in my young 20s that really threw me for a loop. When you see your life going one way and then it so radically shifts and goes a way that is full of grief and full of shock, you're almost forced to find a new part of yourself that you never knew existed. And that's around the time that I actually started the Instagram platform. It was my diary. And I just wrote all the things that I had to feel and that I had to figure out. It was so cathartic, and I'm so happy I did it because I could have run away from myself. And instead, I did what I tell people to do all the time, which is when a wave comes, go deep.
Yeah.
And a wave came, knocked me off my feet, and I went right in. It was like, I'm in the ocean. I am in such a place of unknown. And what feels like instability, I'm going to go so deep right now. And it changed my entire life. If I didn't have my Instagram platform, I could not have my own practice.
Yeah.
It really changed me.
Was that the catalyst of...
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I sat down at my kitchen table with my best friend and her little sister. Shout out to Kelsey, Dunn, and Maxine. And
Kelsey, Maxine, woo woo.
Woo woo. I sat there and we were all talking about it, and it was my birthday, and it was after this whole thing happened. And they said, just do it. Just start an Instagram page. I'm like, no. Boss all around in life. And she's like, oh my God, Aliza, I'm going to help you with it, and it's going to be great. And she's like, you need to have a post by the end of this month. And if you don't, I'm coming after you, or something like that.
Were you very private?
So private.
Right.
I am the most introverted human being. I can't even begin. And people don't believe that.
Yeah,
but
that does surprise me.
I'm so introverted. Me with a book, Shabbat, 25 hours, like that's all I need.
Dang, you really are an introvert.
Yeah, big introvert.
Okay.
So that was one moment. And I had another moment that, I'm giving away all my trade secrets, but this is great. I was speaking with a healer, actually. It's also funny because as a therapist, we're
going to talk about other modes.
Yeah,
we're gonna talk about
I'm a
modes.
behavioral therapist. I get in the trenches of the people. I say, you have a fear. I'm going to face it with you. We're going to do the work. We're going to we're going to create the changes. I'm not a woo-woo, heebie-jeebie.
Yeah.
but I am. So speaking with my healer.
But that's good though.
Yeah.
I think the more modalities that you as a therapist, like a practitioner will call you, like experience, probably just makes you better and better at your job.
Yeah.
Right?
And you need it all. You need to be able to be very deep and very in touch and also very practical about how to help people create change in their lives.
Yeah. All right, so you're talking to your healer.
I'm talking to my healer. And at one point she says to me, "Oh my God, you like say a lot of not nice things to yourself in your own head." She just called me out. And I was like, "Oh, no, I don't. Just guess you do. You need to stop. You need to stop it today." And that day, I made a mental pact with myself in my own head to stop doing that.
How old are you at that time?
25.
Yeah.
25. And it's been 6 years.
Because that voice, that mean voice, we all have it, right?
Yeah.
It does kind of come and go at different stages of life. Or it's less, it doesn't go. It's less loud or it's less obvious, right?
Yeah, and it changes.
Yes.
It changes, and sometimes it's obviously rude, and sometimes it subtly just kind of creates jabs that we don't think matter, but they matter.
Yeah.
And it could be something so subtle as, I hate how we look today.
Yep.
And that impacts us. You wouldn't want your life partner saying that to you, but you are your life partner. You're the voice in your own head all the time. And if you're giving yourself those subtle jabs, even if you're very emotionally evolved, it adds up.
Yeah. And you stopped and never looked back.
I stopped and I never looked back. I sometimes have moments where I catch myself and I go back to that place. I don't talk to myself like that. And the coolest part about it is that it made me very sensitive to other people saying things to me. And if somebody says something that doesn't register as supportive or kind or gentle, I can say back to them, "Oh, that doesn't work for me."
Yeah.
And it sounds kind of radical, but
it does sound kind of radical.
But I'm like, that's not how people speak to me.
Right.
And it's as simple as that sometimes. And they say, "Oh, okay."
I had like a guest on here. She's like an older woman, she's like wonderful, but she would say like, "Who the F do you think you are to talk to me like that?" To the voice in her head.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my God." And she's like, "You have to do that." And I'm like, it's true, because you have to really call it. My voice is really mean. Was yours really mean?
Mine was just, I didn't believe in myself at all.
Right.
At all.
Do you think the voices in our head that are quite mean are our voices, or are they other people's voices?
They're not your voice.
Right.
They were never your voice. You didn't come out of the womb being self-critical.
Right.
And being mean.
Right.
Somebody got you jaded.
Someone got us there.
Someone got you jaded. And I ask people all the time, whose voice is that?
Yeah.
Who did that to you?
Yeah.
Who made you think that that's an appropriate way to speak to yourself or to speak to any human being?
Right.
And it's just when you reflect on that, and again, you don't have to do that in the chair right now.
Yeah.
But usually people can pinpoint a mom or a dad or a teacher or a friend. It could have been a best friend who, when you were 5 years old, you didn't have the wherewithal to say, "Hey, best friend, people don't speak to me like that."
Yeah.
But then or an older sister, right? Then it starts just living in there, and then you think it's your own, but it's not yours at all.
Yeah.
So you're not mean to yourself. Somebody else implanted a voice inside of your head that's mean to you.
Horrible.
Horrible. Gotta get it out.
Yeah, you do. I didn't want to. I have like conversations with that voice a lot because it's mean and very loud and pervasive.
Yeah.
And it stops you from doing the important work that you're here to do.
For sure. And also on the flip side, imagine if that voice was supportive. Imagine how you feel after you listen to an incredible podcast that just like lights you up.
Yeah.
You feel ready to take on the world and do the hard thing.
That's why I listen to podcasts, honestly, to drown out the other voices.
Okay, now imagine that you had that podcast as the running voice in your head. Imagine what you'd be capable of. I mean, you already are creating this crazy, gorgeous universe that you live in. Imagine how much more lovely it would be to live in there.
Like, what do we do with the voice? Is it just a case of like, who the F do you think you are to talk to me like that?
I wouldn't do that with the voice in my head because I already notice my stomach muscles tightening when I hear, "Who the F do you think?" I'm like, oh God, immediately I'm nervous.
Okay.
So I personally need a lot more gentleness, but some people are a little more tough than me, and that's fine.
Yeah, right.
Maybe people need that toughness.
Right.
one of the exercises that this healer had me do, I hated it so much, and then I loved it so much, was correct the voice immediately. If you have a voice in your head that says, or a thought that says anything negative, like what's an example of a negative thought?
Nobody cares about what you have to say.
Everybody in the universe cares about what I have to say today. That's the correction. Here's the kicker. Out loud. You have to say it out loud.
Stop it.
There are people around you, so what? You look like an idiot, so what? We're overcorrecting.
Okay.
So what? Out loud. Everybody in the universe cares about what I have to say today. I did that for 6 months.
Does that not make one delusional?
I mean, if we're talking about pop therapy, it can be a little delulu.
Okay.
You know?
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
You can do it within reason.
Yeah.
And eventually the voice like balances out.
Right. Because then like I don't want to create like a version of myself that's like has like, you know, feelings of grandeur or.
I tell people to be careful.
Yeah.
If that's going to be a pitfall for you, then notice that.
Yeah.
And keep it in check. But to be honest, more often than not, the people that I see and the people that I speak to, even in my own self,
Yeah.
it's not delusions of grandeur that we have to be worried about.
So true.
It's delusions of I'm not worthy.
Yeah.
And I'm not enough.
Yeah.
That's a lot more detrimental.
You're right. Can you share any just like really like a breakthrough or transformation that you've like had with a client that was like just like really something that stands out?
I had a patient who really struggled with anger. And we would notice that every time she would feel anger, it would get ricocheted into somebody else's universe, kind of like that person that DM'd you. And we had a moment where she said to me, you know, I woke up today and I realized that I just don't feel angry anymore.
Wow.
And I think this goes back to the idea that when a wave comes, go deep. That whatever is the deeper emotion that you're feeling, no matter how big, if you are not afraid of it and you let yourself actually experience the wave, whether it's anger or fear or shame, the emotion will rise. It will get really big. It will like hit a 10 out of 10. But then that emotion will naturally fall because that's the way emotions work. So if you let yourself feel, you will get to the other side. And that's across the board for a lot of people with a lot of different feelings. I'm an anxiety therapist, so most of the work that I do, it's shifted over time, but a lot of the work that I was trained in doing in the beginning was helping people face fears, whether it was performance anxiety, specific phobias, OCD, panic disorder, social anxiety. The feeling that people have when they've conquered all the things they walked into therapy saying, I will never do this, it's unlike any other.
Wow.
Yeah.
What would you like? Would you say a large percent of people are like have social anxiety?
A lot of people have social anxiety.
So I'm thinking like almost everybody I know does.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like in some ways you almost need that. Like you're walking into a large social situation. We don't always know the contracts of those social situations.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I get social anxiety and I'm a sociable person.
Yeah.
So I gotta imagine like a huge percentage of people are walking around with social anxiety. Do you get social anxiety?
I do. Perks of being an anxiety therapist is I really can manage it well.
Yeah.
There's a difference between unknown and anxiety.
That's true.
There's a difference between going into a setting that I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go and it gives me nerves and anxiety. I feel nerves all the time. I do scary things all the damn time.
Right.
I have to train myself to do scary things all the time because I'm not naturally a fearless person. I am I don't know how we're going to define naturally. When I was a kid, I was terribly fearless. I broke all the bones in the world because I just was jumping off things and, doing
Maybe
everything.
That's why your parents put you in therapy.
I think that's part of the reason. But we have fears. A lot of us have fears.
Right.
And there's a difference between saying, ooh, I don't know how this one's going to go. I hope it goes well. I'm not entirely sure, and doing the thing anyway.
Right.
Versus saying, I'm so anxious and going down a spiral of nobody's going to like me. I'm definitely going to blow it. Nobody cares. I look horrible. I'm just not going to go, or I'm going to go and I'm going to have a panic attack and I knew it. I can never do hard things.
Right.
There's a very big difference.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, there are people that get nervous to go into social situations, but they'll still go. Yeah. Where it becomes a problem is like if it's taking over your life and you're not able to like perform in the way that you want to perform.
Exactly.
Social anxiety is an interesting one. Yeah. I always see these memes about it, like back to the pop therapy. People are like, when you leave a room, do you just like, or a party, do you immediately think everybody hated you or are you normal? And I'm like, I never in my life had that thought when I left any environment. Everybody hated me.
Good for you.
But I think that's
so common.
I had no idea.
So common. And this goes back to the shame thing.
Yeah.
Because we're such connected human beings. As creatures, we love connection. And shame is really about, I don't want people to hate me. I don't want people to reject me.
Yeah.
I don't want people to dislike me for being me.
Yeah.
And whenever that's threatened, we panic.
Yeah.
We panic. We lose it.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people have social anxiety kind of mixed with shame, mixed with I don't believe in myself. And that can become this really toxic spiral.
How do you feel about these new waves of like, what do you feel about like plant-based medicine?
I am all about innovations.
Okay.
I think that this is great. I personally don't specialize in this area. So if somebody has interests, I will refer them to somebody who does specialize in it. Psychedelics, plant-based medicines, our brains are complex. There's so many avenues to getting towards a space of depth and a space of deep emotion. I'm a big meditator. Okay. Some people hate meditating. That's fine. I'm a very spiritual person. Some people hate spirituality. That's fine. There are so many different avenues to get to the deeper places. So again, I feel like I keep saying this, but I'm a fan. Even though it's not what I do personally, I will refer people and I'll say, if this is what clicks for you, do it responsibly. Right.
I've just been getting a lot, just hearing. It's really prevalent right now.
Yeah.
I wondered how the therapy world sort of looked at it. There's probably a lot of mixed reviews all around. I'm sure some therapists are, because I wonder, I guess it could maybe conflict with someone's work in therapy.
My whole thing is, if you're not stable, please God, don't do it.
Right.
Please don't do it. There's something in your system that's not aligned. Don't rock the boat right now.
Right.
I also have helped a lot of people who have gone through a plant medicine retreat and then come back and we'll process it together.
Right.
So if you can have a space where you can integrate what you've gleaned.
People available or the support set up going into their plant journey, so when they come out there isn't like a proper, because it's really all about the after.
Yes. Yeah. And it's the same with breath work. It's the same as all of these just alternative ways of getting in touch with yourself. They're beautiful avenues.
Yeah.
But if you don't know how to continue walking along the path, you can feel very lost and very alone.
Yeah. Why is everybody so anxious these days? Do you think anxiety is worse now, or it's always been bad? We're just talking about it more? And or do you think anxiety is at an all-time high?
It could be both. I think in terms of the wave of generations, like we were speaking about earlier, there are different themes. There was so much grief and so much shock that, like I said, our parents and our grandparents had to go through. And I think anxiety is just a huge part of our culture right now. Young people are anxious. People in their midlife are anxious. Why is everybody so anxious? $1 million question.
It feels like we're more anxious society than we've ever been. Everybody that I know is suffering with anxiety. Pretty much everyone, except maybe my best friend, because she's a little sleepy. Everybody.
By the way, you have to be one or the other. You're never
sleepy
both,
or you're anxious.
You're either like a tiny bit
to things in ways we never did. Like if you think about like a simpler life, I have to imagine that we had less anxiety in simpler times.
You're living in a little house with your sisters and your brothers and your parents. The lights go out. You read a book. You go to bed. I mean, come on.
Life's good.
Can we imagine? You go to school with your neighbors. Done.
And you only know about the kids in your school and what they're wearing. That's all you have to contend with.
And you're all buying your dresses from the same seamstress. So everybody's wearing the same thing. We're reading
seamstress? How Upper West Side of
wherever you are.
Your privilege is showing.
Oh my God, so good. Wherever you're.
No, but it's true.
The same
everyone
mall.
Everyone was going to the same place.
The same place, same people, same culture, same books, same stories. You just don't have that much to compare it to.
Right.
And there's something so simplistic and beautiful about that.
Yeah.
I think you're right. We have way too much access to everybody's life. And we don't have enough access to the hardships of people's life. So you're seeing everybody across all walks of life and you're like, I want that from that person's life, that from that person's life. Their childhood, their husband, their job, their looks.
My friend called it the a la carte of dating because she was just here Friday and she was like, she's going through, like, she just broke up. And she's like, and now I'm worried that I'm going to do this thing. And we're going to talk all about dating.
Oh, we should.
She's like, where I'm like, oh, I want this from my ex-husband and I want this, but I like this from the guy I just broke up with. And like, so I have to imagine that a lot of the anxiety too is like, because we have this, we're picking a la carte from what we visually see everybody's life as.
Yeah. And we also have an immediacy in our culture.
Yeah.
I want it. I should have it. We forget the grit and we forget about the grind that comes along with achievement and accomplishment. Even personal growth, we forget about it. So there's this sense of, I see something or I want something or I want to become something. Therefore, I should have it tomorrow. Because that person on Instagram did.
Right.
So if I don't have it, what's wrong with me? So you have access to everything. You have an immediacy about life. It's just not a great recipe. I also do think, as we're asking the questions, why are we so anxious as a culture and as a society? Who cares?
Right.
The fact is that we are.
I guess I'm anxious about it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think so much of the work is just saying, this is what it is.
Right.
Let's do the work of healing. Let's do the work of getting back on our feet, of not letting the anxiety control our lives, listening to it, holding it, tending to it, but being in the driver's seat of life. Answers end up coming. We don't always need them before we heal, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. I have this thing that I always say. You know, and I'm sure you say it as a therapist, and every therapist believes this to their core, is like, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Yes.
Can you speak to some, or maybe help individuals who might be listening who have like a loved one or a partner, a child, a spouse, a family member who they desperately, who needs to maybe seek some therapy, and who is saying like, I don't need therapy, or maybe they themselves are saying, yeah, so I'm messed up, but I don't need therapy. Like we're all a little bit, you know, is there, like, what do you say to those people? And is there language around like, why is it your responsibility to sort of take care of your mental health?
You're saying, what should people say to their partners who aren't taking care of their mental health?
Yeah.
Yeah. Lead by example is one of the first things I tell people. Be so solid in your own world that you don't get enmeshed in their emotional world. You cannot change someone. And that is a rule that's never going to shift.
Yeah.
You cannot change your partner. You will never be able to change your partner. The more you show up as the most elevated version of yourself, you can create an environment in which they are more ready to change. So that's the first thing you can do, to focus on yourself so that you don't get wrapped up in kind of a comorbid emotional issue. Because if my partner has an issue and then I have an issue because they have an issue, we both have issues. That's not great.
Yeah.
So the more stable you are, first of all, good.
Yeah.
That's good. Second of all, they might see that and talk about your therapy journey, talk about your wellness, talk about how it helps you. You might create an environment where it's more conducive for them to change.
Yeah.
Once you get your partner into therapy, and I tell this to people all the time, is play the good cop, bad cop. Let the therapist be the bad cop, and do not try to micromanage your partner's growth.
Okay.
Don't do it. It will backfire. Let your therapist micromanage it. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
And the more you show up supportively and basically say, I see you growing. I see you doing the thing. I see that you haven't had any hard alcohol this month, and I just want you to know that I noticed and I'm proud of it. The person is just going to be a lot more likely to change versus if you say, did you just take a drink? Did you just do that thing that you said you were never going to do again?
Yeah.
They're just going to go right back to their problem behaviors.
Yeah.
Criticism doesn't help.
Yeah. That was definitely like a household that I grew up in, like a lot of criticism between my parents.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that line comes up for me a lot because I just see so much of this. Like I was traumatized. I'm traumatized. I had trauma. This was hard for me. I'm disadvantaged because X, I'm angry because X. I really wish there was just more of an understanding culturally that like, it really is not your fault, but it's everybody's responsibility to heal
themselves. Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know, like, I just think it's a tough thing for people.
It is a tough thing for people. And that goes back to my dream is to live in a society where we're not fragilizing ourselves, where we hear our feelings and we say, let me go do something about this. If you have a pain in your joint, you go to a doctor.
Right.
If you have a pain in your mental or emotional system, go to a therapist. It doesn't mean you're nuts. It means you're trying to fix some part of you that's just ready to be healed.
Yeah. Yeah. Can narcissists ever change?
I work with narcissists.
Trickiest of the bunch, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're definitely up there in the top 5, I would say, but...
Who's trickier than a narcissist?
A borderline. Oh, yeah. Those are...
Juicy.
Oh, yeah. This is these are my average, like...
Oh my God, this is a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
What are some symptoms of like a borderline personality? I don't know that I've ever encountered one.
You have. And when I tell you, you're going to start, you can't unsee it.
Oh my God, okay, go.
So first of all, I want to just say one thing. There shouldn't be a stigma around either of these diagnoses.
Okay.
We don't need to stigmatize a narcissist. We don't need to stigmatize somebody who is diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Just like any other personality disorder or mental health condition, they're mental health conditions. These people wouldn't have chose it if they had the choice, right?
That's true.
It was kind of thrust upon them based on their traumas, their genetics, their environments. They deserve as much respect and healing as everybody else. So that's just one thing I'll say. But
that's hard when you're engaging with one.
Well, because narcissists, as part of their coping mechanism, will do everything in their power to belittle you. So that's why you hate them so much.
It's so difficult.
They will put all of their insecurities on you. The thing you have to remember with a narcissist is that their ego is a balloon that's way too blown up, that if even the tiniest thing pokes it, their entire ego shatters. So they have to work super hard to not shatter their ego,
right?
Which is why they will make you feel like an actual dumpster fire.
Right.
So by definition, their disorder spills out into everybody else, which is why they're so unlovable.
It's very hard to love a narcissist.
It's very hard to love a narcissist.
Can they change?
I've seen it.
What?
I've seen it.
Really?
Yep. I've seen it. I will say I've seen it over the course of years.
Yeah.
But I've seen it.
Okay.
And by the way, when I am working with somebody who has narcissism and I see them starting to ask the questions, how do I do this differently? It's probably the biggest joy that I get as a therapist because I'm hit or miss. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know if we're going to be able to go there because I am basically telling you that everything you believe about yourself is false. And that is a tough pill for anyone to swallow.
It's a hard to swallow pill.
Yeah. So you don't always know how it's going to go, but I've seen it happen.
Wow.
Now, I will say that in the context of me being a therapist, I've also been in relationships with narcissists, which I would never recommend and I would never do again.
Same.
So
it's very hard.
It's very hard. And it's not your job as a partner to change your narcissistic partner.
Right.
And I tell people that
and that's
too.
a hard to swallow pill.
Yeah, but that is the truth. And if your narcissistic partner is not in therapy, committed therapy, because narcissists love to start therapy and then quit because they know better, just know that is a battle you're going to be facing for a very long time, probably forever. And I have no problem saying that too.
Yeah, that's why I asked, like, can they change? Like, I've heard conflicting views on this, but like...
But what I'll say is that you can't change them.
Right.
So to the listeners that are dating a narcissist...
Or married to.
Or married to a narcissist...
Or sometimes it's a parent.
Though, by the way, those are the hardest.
I know.
Those are the hardest because you look at them and you want them so badly to be the parent you need them to be, and they never will be. That is the hardest thing to shift.
Right.
That's the hardest kind of narcissist. So if you're married to one, dating one, were married to one, or have one as a parent, please know this. Once and for all, you will never change them, and it will never be your job to change them. But that's a tough pill to swallow for sure.
And what are some of the signs of borderline? And you're talking about borderline personality?
Yeah. I mean, clinically speaking, people with BPD really struggle with oftentimes self-harm, suicidal ideation, really difficult times getting into and staying in healthy relationships. Borderlines love a narcissist. They are the most dynamic duo. They end up together a lot.
Interesting.
On the surface, they're people with really hot and cold emotions, not in a bipolar way that it kind of takes 2 weeks to shift. I have a really strong sense of I got life and I'm really down. It can happen like that. Really difficult time tolerating any sort of distress. So something that triggers them can trigger them so greatly and deeply, and it almost feels like the whole world is ending. Really difficult time just balancing like everyday emotions that come up in life, cannot be stable. Hot and cold in relationships. People say Princess Diana had borderline personality disorder.
Interesting.
Yeah, who knows, really.
Right.
But that kind of presentation, like incredible some days and then just so down some other days. Eating disorder, just really difficult time overall with relationships, with moods, with emotions, just like struggling to get it together in life. But on the surface can also look really put together too. Yeah.
Whoa, fun times.
Oh, yeah.
Let's shift into relationships for a second.
Okay, let's do it.
I know you're not that, like, I know you, thank God, you're happily married now, but you are not so far away from the dating scene. You're like a young woman, right? My friends are reporting that it's hell death out there. It's an ice storm.
I would say it's not fun.
And a lot of the onus has been put on men. Like, well, I guess because I'm female, a lot of my friends are female, and so I'm hearing it from the female perspective. But I'm hearing that the dating landscape is terrible, and the reasons are because men are not looking to settle down, and they're not committing, and they're ghosting. I guess is and you probably have a lot of clients that are dating too.
Yes.
Are the women and men both at fault? Is there one party that's doing a little bit more of the bad behavior?
So what I tell people first and foremost is that it's not your fault for attracting an emotionally unavailable man.
Right, because it seems like that's all there is left.
Correct.
So for sure, it's not
so hard to find a good one out there, I will say that. But it is your fault for keeping them.
Oh.
So once you get the memo that this person is not going to commit, they're not aligning with your dating and relationship values, which, by the way, if you don't know your relationship values, why are you dating? Take a hard stop, figure out what it is you want, figure out what type of relationship works for you, let that be your North Star. And then if the guy you're with does not align with the things that you're looking for, and I don't mean the checklist, by the way. I mean, does he text me once a day because that's important to me? Are we seeing each other at least once a week because that's important to me? Do we have a dating flow? Because that's important to me. I don't need to be engaged to you in 6 months, but I need to have rhythm. If these things are important to you and they're not aligning, why are you still with him?
Right.
That's on you.
100%.
He's showing you exactly who he is.
Talk a little bit about dating values. What does that look like? I mean, what is, I'm not even familiar with that whole term.
Relationship values are basically the roadmap of how you want to date and what you want your relationship to look like. Most people don't know this. Most people get into a relationship and they say, yeah, he's the kind of guy that just doesn't text. Okay, but does that work for you?
Right.
Well, I guess so because he's great. No.
Right.
That might not be working for you, and that's why you can't stand him. Or that's why you're emotionally volatile around him, because you have pent up emotional energy that you haven't been able to express to him. If you don't know your relationship and dating values, you're going to have a very hard time. My dating values were very different as a 27-year-old than they were as a 21-year-old.
Right.
I love my independence. I love my independence as a 27, 28-year-old, 29-year-old. Things shifted very, very, very deeply for me.
Yeah.
And once I started knowing that, I was dating other people.
Right.
And the more in touch I got with that, when somebody wasn't measuring up, I was like, oh, you're just not for me because you want to do this whole dating thing differently. That's totally fine, but I know that doesn't work for me, so I'm out. And it helped a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. What are like some good dating do's and don'ts for girls and boys? Shoulds and shouldn'ts.
Shoulds and shouldn'ts. Well, to go back to your other question, women, I think, try to mold themselves into this pretzel of what they think the guy is going to want, because they think that that's going to get them closer to finding their partner. It gets you closer to being in a relationship, but it doesn't get you closer to finding your partner. This is something that another mentor of mine has said to me. The truth will always come out. It's just a matter of time. So if he's not the kind of guy that's going to commit, the truth will come out. And if you're not the girl that actually likes him for who he is, that's going to come out too. So if you pretzel yourself, that's fine. You might pretzel yourself into a relationship, but you're probably not going to pretzel yourself into the right one.
Yikes. Yeah. As someone who's been divorced a couple times and been in some bad relationships, I completely resonate with that.
Yeah. Do you feel like you pretzeled? You were the grand pretzel queen?
I was the pretzel queen of the East Coast.
Of the East Coast.
I contorted so many times to like these guys and what their lifestyle was like and and completely abandoned self. Completely abandoned self.
And isn't that really everything, right? The more you abandon self, whether it's in dating, whether it's as a mom with kids who's entering a different phase of life, whether it's as a Jew or a spiritual person, whatever your religion is, if you contort yourself into what you think society wants of you, you will feel empty. And I think, to your point, you will feel hella anxious all the time.
Totally. I didn't have my, like, the dating values, or what do you call them? Like,
I call them relationship
values. The relationship values, right. I was getting into relationships and just being like, I hope this one sticks. Do you know what I mean? Sure. And I think probably a lot of women do that.
I would say, I hope I can be what he's looking for.
Totally.
What is that? Is that not the most unfeminist thing I've ever said to myself? I had to clean that one up real quick.
A lot of us do it.
A lot of us do it.
I know my friends still are. Even at this age, they're still like, well, he like, he does this a lot. He does that a lot. And I'm like, okay, like, are you cool with that?
Right, does that work for you?
Does that work for you? I never asked myself that question. I'm like, I guess I have to deal with this now.
Exactly.
And I think in a marriage, it's different because it's like, right, you make the decision. It's the sanctity of marriage is different. But while you're still dating, like, you have all the options in the world to be like, this doesn't work for me. That's the time to do it.
I will challenge you as well. In marriage, you of course need to say this doesn't work for me. Something about the way you roll doesn't work for me.
That's true.
I'm going to say it.
For sure. For sure.
I think it's also a very brave decision for people to be able to say that and stand up for themselves and who they are.
No, what I meant was...
Oh, like getting out of a marriage?
Yeah, just like, this doesn't work for me, goodbye.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
because
the stakes are a little higher.
You leave your socks on the floor, I'm out of here. Right. Yes, I agree with you.
Right. Like, I think we have to be a little bit like the distinction between, like, in dating, I think you should be much more flippant. Like, this does not, and then not too flippant, because, like, we need flexibility. Everyone's going to have their shit.
For sure. But that's why if you know the things that you absolutely need. These are my relationship values. That's what I absolutely need. You know what you're about to compromise on, and you know what you're okay to compromise on. And then it doesn't feel like a compromise as much.
Right. Okay, so any dating shoulds and shouldn'ts?
You're not going to get everything you want, so get rid of that notion.
Okay.
Put 4 things on your list. Don't deviate. See and listen to people for who they are and who they say they are off the bat. If they tell you who they are in their behaviors or their words, don't make up excuses for them. They're saying it loud and clear. Getting out of a relationship is just as important as getting into one, because whoever you're dating is also somebody that you're not dating.
That's right.
Right? And one thing that really works for me when I was dating, again, I'm a very spiritual person. I'm connected to my spirituality a lot. I would say to myself, if God could create one of me as a woman, he could create one of me as a man. So there's no point in trying to twist myself to work into this person's life because of a belief that there isn't somebody better out there for me. And that helped me a lot, be able to say no to guys that weren't right for me, with this belief that there would be somebody that just felt a lot more naturally good and real and true for what I needed.
I love that. That's a very, that is very deeply spiritual. But it's a kind of a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah. And it people can fill that blank in with the universe, with whatever it is that they're connected to. Just this notion that the universe is looking out for me.
Yeah.
I don't have to sign up for something that I know in my heart and soul isn't good and isn't real and isn't true. I trust the universe enough to know that the right thing exists for me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go find it.
I'll end with this last question.
Yeah.
What are a couple like just best practices that any individual could ought to do in their life to just make, to either get close to themselves and just sort of become like the best, like you mentioned, the elevated version of themselves, so that they could kind of just show up for the people that love them, that need them? Like, what are some best practices?
I saw this quote recently on Instagram. It's the theme of today, the pop therapy on Instagram.
Yeah, it really has been.
It was something along the lines of, I've never seen somebody as desperate for their own attention as a giver.
Ooh.
And if you're the kind of person that's always showing up for other people and giving and creating and beautifying for other people in life and in the world, make a very conscious effort to do that for yourself. Because if you don't, you are pouring from an empty cup. And I always say this too, to myself, honestly, mostly. If I'm giving to myself, I am pouring from an abundant cup.
Yeah.
And you'd way rather pour out abundance than scarcity. So spending time with yourself, I turn off my phone. If I don't turn off my phone at least once a day, I lose my damn mind.
Yeah.
I can't hear myself think. So I give myself a lot of space. I focus on giving to myself more than I give to other people, at least at a certain point within my day. Because I give to people a lot. That's kind of within the nature of the work that I do.
Of course.
And I'm a big meditator, but meditation could be different for everyone. I think that if people have one best practice that they do for themselves, it can create just a very sacred part of your routine, whether that's running or some sort of creation that feels very aligned with you. You're embedding in your world this notion that I care about me, I value me, I love me, I devote time to me, and my world will reflect as such. And if you are a healthier, more solid version of yourself, everybody in your orbit is going to know and is going to feel better in their own worlds around you too.
I love that. Oh, that's a beautiful ending today.
I loved every part of this conversation.
Me too.
Thank you.
And we really covered a lot of ground.
We sure did.
Because how often do I get free therapy? Thank you so much for today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for creating a space. I'm just going to say it. I love your page.
Oh, man.
It feels so beautiful. And I think that we do very different things.
Yeah.
But there's an undertone of I want to beautify the world in a way that is real and deep and true. And I see you doing that so blatantly. And I love that so much. So thanks for all the good stuff that you're putting out there.
Thank you, God.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me here today.
My pleasure.
To many more.